and I get a machine gun to the side of the head, and everything's in slow motion because people out there in society do not accept people like us. Because I try to change my circle of friends, I just couldn't fit in. Right now, the Australian prison system is based around punishment. Punishment and rehabilitation cannot go hand in hand.
Meet Joe Kwon, founder of Confit Pathways and former inmate. Through faith and mentorship, he turned his life around and now leads efforts to empower ex-inmates with fitness and education, advocating for second chances and transformative change.
I was running my own syndicate. At the age of 21, I ended up getting arrested. I was living a life of crime because that was the only life that...
Hi, Joe. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. Cool setup here you got.
It's amazing how we actually met. We met at church, and I remember my pastor, Tony, who changed my life, said, I've got to introduce you to someone. And when I met you, I was like, whoa, this guy's fit. But then I think what was more interesting is within like 5 minutes, your life story was so interesting. From prison to a billionaire mentor, I'm like, I need to get you on this show. And so we're here and there's a lot to talk about. But as you know, I asked you to bring a show and tell item. Yeah. So I can see here some cans of tuna. Please explain.
I've got, I know walking in, you're looking at me going, what the hell? I heard last time someone brought in a Harley Davidson.
Oh, no, not the car, not the bike itself, but a key ring.
Oh, a key ring. I thought someone actually brought in a Harley Davidson. I'm like, how am I going to match a Harley Davidson with 2 cans of tuna? But it's more of a resemblance. I guess you're going to hear about my life story a bit later on and about the things that I did. But I was in prison. And in prison, we use tuna cans as a form of currency. And we're quite, we're quite diverse in how we use tuna cans as well. So not only do we use it for a source of currency, it's also used as an equipment tool to train. So we used to stack a couple tuna cans up and we do push-ups on it so you could get the depth to get that stretch in your chest. And also is used as a weapon. So you put tuna cans inside a sock and you can imagine what it can become. But why I brought this is more of a reminder, you know. So in jail, you know, there's a lot of value on tuna cans, especially the Sirena chili tunas. They cost like $4.80 inside. $4.80 is
really
quite expensive.
It is very expensive compared to what you can get.
Yeah. So it was 85 gram cans of tuna. This is a 95 gram. But in there's so much value placed on these cans of tuna on the outside. You know, you try to give tuna to someone, they're like, no, I'm not going to take that. But it's quite interesting, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. There are different pockets of places and situations where you can find value or you find value for yourself, you know. So, you know, it's a kind of reminder for me, you know, when I first came out of jail, I had a very little self-worth, you know, thinking about, you know, a young kid who went to prison, came out, you know, had no family support, had no work experience, nothing. They're coming out trying to make something of himself. And, you know, Tuna always reminded me that there's always a place where someone's going to find value in me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I've got so much questions around the prison. I can't wait to get into that segment. Well, take us back then. What happened? How did you get into prison in the first place? You know, share some childhood.
Yeah, so look, I'll tell you the build up to it. So my mum came here as an international student from South Korea. So she came here on a scholarship to the Sydney Conservatorium of Music as an opera singer. So quite talented lady, but she could not speak a word of English. So she came here because she's got a lot of talent in singing. So she was not only studying English, but she was studying French, German, Italian, because she needs to learn how to speak that for her master's degree for opera, right? At the same time, single mother, she's working 3 jobs while studying full time and trying to look after her kids. So there wasn't much time for me. Obviously, my mum loved me and wanted to provide for me and put food on the table, as well as pursue her, her kind of career. So I spent a lot of time by myself, only child, no siblings. So I spent a lot of time on the streets. And the only places that we could afford at that time, because she couldn't even get public housing, so she could only afford the very low socioeconomic kind of communities, you know, a lot of disadvantaged communities. And the people that I used to look up to at that time were the older guys that were hanging around in the streets. You know, they had the big chains, nice cars, you know, the beautiful women around their arms, and they had the nice watches and the phones. And I'm thinking, man, I want to be like that. Only because that was the only thing that was kind of that was around me. You know, that was the only thing that I looked up to because I didn't know any better. All right. And you know, I ended up joining a gang at a very young age.
How old was that?
I was in year 7. Yeah, I don't know how old that is.
13.
13 around that. I ended up joining a gang in year 7 because, you know, because I didn't have a father figure. I was one angry kid, and at the time I was a black belt, junior black belt taekwondo. So I could kick before I could walk, kind of thing, you know. South Korean background, you know, the local gangs picked that up, you know, saying this kid's got potential. Let's kind of use him as a foot soldier, kind of thing. But I joined the gang not because of the criminality factors. I joined the gang because that was the only place where I felt a sense of belonging. You know, that was the only place where I felt accepted. You know, I didn't feel that at school. I ended up getting kicked out in year 10, you know, and I didn't feel that at school or in the community around me. And that's the reason why I joined the gang. And crime only became a byfactor of wanting to belong. You know, and when you're at such a young age, especially for males, you want to belong to something. You want to have someone older, especially like an older male figure, kind of guiding you in a positive way. But I didn't have that, so that's my excuse. So I ended up joining a gang at a young age, and then, you know, as you know, it progressed into bigger crimes, and by the time I got to about 20, just started my 20, just before 20. I was running my own syndicate. There's a lot more story before that, but I was running my own syndicate, and at the age of 21, I ended up getting arrested at the Shangri-La Hotel. It was literally a month after my 21st birthday, so it was November 27th, and I just did a massive drug deal, and I had about close to $50,000 cash on the coffee table, and I ordered room service that morning, and I get a knock on the door, and I'm thinking it's room service with my big breakfast and my orange juice and my long black. But all I had was guys wearing black coming in with machine guns, and I was thinking that I was getting robbed at that time. So I've gone and thrown the cash all over the floor because I know they're here for the cash, and a beeline for the door. And I get a machine gun to the side of the head, and everything's in slow motion. You know, I've got $100 note stuck to my face because I'm getting pinned to the ground. And I hear the words, "You're under arrest, this is the police." And literally my heart sunk, you know, I could hear this buzzing in my ears as if because I was probably from the concussion from the gun. And my world stopped. I'm thinking, oh, this is happening, you know. And then as they hogtied me, and as they were taking me out of the room, I looked out the window and I could see the opera house. And it was a crazy moment because, you know, my mum came here as an opera singer, and on very rare occasions, my mum used to always save up money and take me to the opera house because that was her passion, and she wanted me to have a better life. And she'd take me to the opera house as a little kid, and that those memories came flooding in, and I just thought, man, I just took everything for granted.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the end of my life in society.
Yeah.
I ended up getting locked up. Got sentenced to 13 years for directing a criminal enterprise at the age of 21.
Wow. I'm actually holding back my tears because the reason being, I was a single mum. And then, so I had a son who was, you know, and I was in a relationship, a bad relationship. And I guess I can relate to you in a sense where I've pictured me as your mum, and you are my son. And I guess I'm lucky in that what I said to myself was, I am, I'm not going to fail you. I'm going to make sure I'm going to succeed because I do not want my son to be, having a bad life just because I chose to be a stupid single mum, you know, and mess around with things. And so his life turned out very good, and I just felt, I don't know, as you're telling me, I was just imagining how my son's life could have been different. And I felt also really connected to how your mum would feel, to really want you to succeed, and it didn't turn out that way. So thank you for sharing that story, because it really just really touched me in so many levels.
I'm glad you're such a good mum. So is my mum, It's just unfortunate the circumstances that we were put in.
Yeah, and I think what was good, and it's probably even at the stage where I had opportunities such as starting an online business, and I was like, you know what, I need to start an online business so I can be there for my son. And I think him witnessing his own father or mum being kind of the naughty side, he actually read it as like, you know what, I don't want to be like them. So he's actually quite opposite, and he didn't really have that. But thank you for sharing that. And so then what happened? Like in jail, you mentioned that you bumped into a billionaire. I know we're going to shortcut this story, but still, like, what was life like in prison? And then how did that get to that point where you...
So remember the life that I was living. It was I was living a life of crime because that was the only life that I kind of knew. Had very little education. I dropped out of school in year 10. And even until that point, I wasn't even going to school. I was skipping school every day, hanging out with the boys, on the street. And then when I went to jail, it was a literally eye-opener. I've lived my whole life as kind of in that criminal world, but that was child's play until I went to prison. It was nuts. Like there was the process even going into prison before. Like, so when you first get arrested, they put you in a holding cell called Surrey Hills. So what we know about Surrey Hills Police Station, it's very nice outside. There's like a park and, it's in the middle of the city, but there's a labyrinth of dungeons underneath the police station of these fish tank cells. So a lot of people coming off drugs that are getting placed in there. So I was in there and they'd taken my clothes. The police had taken my clothes as evidence. So I was put in this blue jumpsuit. So all I had was a blue jumpsuit on, and I stayed there for close to 2 weeks. And when I was in there was this gentleman that was like literally in a fetal position facing the wall, and he didn't move for like 2 days. And I actually thought he was dead. So I went and actually kicked him to see if he was alive. I didn't like kick him, but
just
tapped him to see if he was alive, and he moved. So I was like, okay, well, at least he's not dead, right? And later on, he gets up and goes straight to the toilet. Toilet meaning is just a toilet, like a metal toilet seat in the middle, like inside of the room, right? And he goes to door number 2. So I was like, all right, we'll give him some privacy. I turned around. There's no covers or nothing. Then he starts screaming, and I'm going, what the hell? Then I look at him. He's got his own feces in his hand, and he starts wiping it everywhere. And I was like, what the hell is this? And that's a term called bronzing, and there's an actual term for it. So he's now, like, for him, obviously there's going through a lot of mental health issues, and he's been in there for such a long time. So he was there way before I was. I was already going insane, and the bloke was there way before me. Imagine how he would have felt. I'm pretty sure he was coming off a lot of drugs and everything as well. And he started wiping it on the walls, and he started coming towards me. And I was like, I was putting my fist like, don't fucking come near me, kind of thing.
Where were the guards? Like,
there's no guards there. I'm screaming, going, help, banging on the walls. And and that was taste of that. I wasn't even in prison yet.
Yeah.
And that was the lead up to prison, right? So that was Surrey Hills Police Station, and then I went straight to Parkley Correctional Centre. So they place you in kind of like a newbies wing. So they kind of monitor you for 2 weeks and then move you into the main, and then move me into the main wing. And as I was walking in, it was the most intimidating thing that I've experienced. Grown men, they're massive dudes, they're all on top of each other's shoulders doing squats in the yard, push up. I don't know why in jail everyone's got their shirt off and they're also buff. I don't know why.
And at the time, were you buffed yet, or you got buffed in jail?
I wasn't. I did taekwondo, but I wasn't really into gym, right? I wasn't really into training and all that kind of stuff. So when I went there, it was quite intimidating. And when you go to prison, there's you segregate to different nationalities. So if you're Asian, you stick with the Asians. If you're Indigenous, you stick with the Indigenous. Muslims with the Muslims, and it's kind of like segregated like that. And the Pacific Islanders with the Pacific Islanders.
And what's their logic behind that?
I think it's because, we are a multicultural country. It says a lot about our kind of communities out in Sydney. We have pockets of different racial societies. So you look at Cabramatta, predominantly you go there, it's all Vietnamese. You go to like Auburn, it's all Middle Easterns. So it's like, I think it started from when the first immigrants came in and they started settling, and then they will come to jail because obviously, it's very hard for them to associate into society, and a lot of them get into crime. And I think it's them just sticking with their own kind because they understand. It's more like a relatability kind of thing. And it's just a culture that's been going there for a long time, So that everyone's spread around in their own little pockets of different nationalities. I didn't know that the Asians and the indigenous were having a war. And I walked straight into a yard that was full of indigenous, and shit went down.
Not shit this time, but like fighting.
Yeah, shit went down, and I ended up holding my ground, and I ended up getting moved to the Asian wing and came in. And, up until that point, I've just been eating white bread with margarine on it. And when I came into the Asian unit, they like welcomed me with open arms, and they had a bowl of bumyu ready. Yeah, so if you don't know what bumyu is, like a soup with like they made it out of tuna and eggs, and they made it into a bowl, and they made soup out of it. I mean, I was that hungry. I finished. I could have washed my face in the soup. That's how good it was. And that's they just kind of opened up with and welcomed me with open arms, and that was my time in jail. And I was a 21-year-old kid. So I still wasn't thinking right. I'm thinking in my head, you know what? I'm going to be a career criminal for the rest of my life.
Were you proud? Like, as in you were thinking like, obviously at the beginning it was all about connection and having feel like you're belonging. But now all of a sudden you've got a new identity of like this tough guy that I want to be this cool guy. Is that what you were thinking about yourself?
It's not about being a cool guy. It was like, well, what other choice do I have? Now I'm in jail. I might as well just be the best at it. Just go along with it. What other choice do I have? Like, I'm in prison now. I'm like a proper criminal.
And when you were on the street and you made all this money and you were, I guess, succeeding in your crime department, like, what did you see yourself as? Like,
look, I didn't really see, like, dude, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I did have an entourage of people, boys around me, and it's like you feel, I don't want to say powerful, but you kind of do in a way. And not just power, but it's just the fact that people are wanting to be around you. Like since growing up, I was abandoned by father. Mum's always out busy, so I never had that kind of love at home. And I guess it was me masking that like sense of like wanting to have some sort of connection and love from people. And that's where I was looking at, which was all wrong.
Yeah.
Come to think about it.
Yeah.
And trust me, I had 9 years to think about all this every day in my prison cell. And I think that was the reason why. And, obviously I was in that life at that time, and, crime was the only thing that I knew. So I was like, let's be the best at it. And I was still a young kid. So, I was doing a lot of risky behavior while I was in prison.
and just curious too, when you became naughty, did your mum disown you? Because typically Asian parents are like, get out of here, you disgrace, you're a disgrace to the family, and so because that's what happened to me, making a lot of bad choices. How was your mum like?
No, my mum never gave up on me. So my mum was always, but my mum's a very strong Christian lady.
So you were in a way you're brought up as a Christian.
Yeah, I was brought up as a Christian. Mum used to always take me to church. And when you're young, you just follow your mum because you have to. And I got to a certain age where I was doing all this stuff, and it was conflicting for me. I'm living this certain life, and then I'm going to church and learning about these things, and I felt conflicted. I remember every day going to church, listening to sermons. I had my head down the whole time because I just didn't feel like I belonged there. And when my mum knew that I was doing certain things, like even in high school, I used to always rock up, come home with blood all over my shirt, and my mum would be like, what are you doing? And she'll try to pray for me, and I felt like she was forcing religion down my throat, and the more she did it, the more I repelled it. And that was my childhood, literally, and it got to the point where I despised Christianity. I grew up with it, but I was like, I don't want to be I'm not part of this community. I don't feel welcomed. I'm not. They're talking about one thing, but I'm living another thing. That's not my community. But I always did believe that there was a God, but I just didn't believe in a church. So my understanding of faith was very contorted, I guess. So that's when, and I went to jail, and then I found my community with other inmates. And there was a time, it was about halfway into my prison sentence.
So this was a 9-year.
I got sentenced to 13 years, but with the bottom sentence of 9. So my whole sentence is 13, but a non-parole period of 9. So I have to do mandatory 9 years. And I hit about halfway point, which is about 4.5 years in. And I was like, most people will be celebrating that it's halfway through, you got another half to go. And I'm there going, oh my God, is that only half? It felt like an eternity. It literally felt like eternity. And the things that you see, it's actually quite traumatic, a lot of the stuff you see, but you get so accustomed to it, it becomes normality. But I look back at it now and go, wow, that's really traumatic stuff that you're actually witnessing every day on a daily basis, you know, not just from like, you know, people with mental health issues, but to a lot of violence.
So you're always on edge. You never
always-
know what would happen.
You're
each
always
day.
like, not like you're on edge at the start, but then you just become so used to it towards the end, and you're not really on edge, but you look at something that's happening and you're like, oh, another day, another day in paradise. You know, that's what we
I mean,
say.
there's a rumor or myth that in Australia the prisons are like detention centers where you got TV, you got everything, and you're spoiled. It's not like in Asia where you kind of like live in dirt. What is it really like though?
Yeah, like look, I know a lot of people complain. We live in a developed Western country such as Australia, and we do get, as inmates, we do get a lot of benefits. I don't know about rights, but there are some rights. But compared to other third world countries, we've got it very good. We've got running water in our cells, we've got toilets, we've got access to TV, we've got access to medication, we've got access to food. So you can't complain. But where the issue starts is it's like every other country. Your liberties are taken away from you. You're taken away from society. You're placed in a box. Even though you get all these little things, you still have all your freedoms taken away from you. And you're locked in your cell for a very long period of time, and that's where the issues start. A lot of people, they go down a spiral of negativity because most inmates have lived a life that they're not proud of. They come from a lot of trauma and disadvantage. And it's how you think about it that spirals into further negativity. And when I say prison, physically, it's not a hard place. Mentally, it is. I know a lot of people come out with massive mental health issues because they didn't know how to handle jail properly. I was very fortunate enough to have found my purpose in training, which allowed me to stay positive while inside. But before I go to that, going back to I hit halfway point of my prison sentence, and I was literally looking around the whole yard, and I realized that yes, every inmate comes from, or most majority of inmates stem from a lot of childhood trauma and disadvantage. But the biggest common theme amongst all inmates, including myself, was the lack of education. And they don't push education in jail. They don't. They provide it to those who really want to do it. Even then, it's very hard to do, right? I just don't understand why they don't push education. They don't place value in it, right? So I thought maybe this education thing might help me. So one day I was reading this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That was actually my first non-fiction book that really got me into reading as well.
It's a good book. It got me really interested because it gave me hope. I'm like, well, what am I going to do?
How did you get that book?
It's from the prison library.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got that book, and it just got me kind of motivated. Like, oh, maybe I want to live a different life on the outside, And in the book it said accounting is the language of business, and I thought to myself, maybe I should go teach myself this accounting thing. Maybe it might help me. So I went back to the prison library, got myself a first year university accounting textbook, and as soon as I opened it up, all I saw was hieroglyphics. I did not understand a bloody single thing, and I started sweating, and I wanted to give up straight away. And that exact same day, this guy walks into the yard. The rumor was that he's a billionaire accountant. He'd just been locked up for Australia's largest tax fraud. So he used to be a partner at one of the big four accounting firms. Then he went on to make his money from mining, and then he started a pharmaceutical company. So he actually owned the patent to the Alzheimer's gene. And all these pharmaceutical companies are paying royalties to him. That was the level that he was at.
And what did this guy look like? If you describe, was he also fit, or was he very different?
No, big Caucasian guy. He's into his bodybuilding, fitness and stuff like that. So he's different. He's out there. But the thing was, everyone's trying to extort this guy because they heard the word billionaire, right? And I'm an opportunist. All I heard was, I'm like, why are they trying to extort him? He's in jail. What are you going to extort from this guy? All I heard was he's an accountant. And I'm like, you beauty. I want to learn accounting from this guy. So I proposed something to him. I said, look, I'm going to make sure no one lays a finger on you. But in return, you teach me accounting every day. And we shook hands. And
How long was he in jail for?
he did longer than me. He did 9.5 years. Yeah. So he ended up becoming my cellmate not long after. And he kept his end of the bargain. And he not only did he teach me accounting every day, but he taught me about business. He taught me about the value of education. But most importantly, he taught me to believe in myself, self-worth.
So how many hours of education would you get because you've got this cellmate that's living with you?
Like hours. I got to the point where my brain was fried every night, you know. But I was so grateful because that was the only point in my life where I felt I was actually getting smarter. You know? Even though my brain was exploding, I just felt every day I'm getting smarter. I'm learning. You know,
Was there like a curriculum he created?
No.
What did you use to study? I'm curious.
He actually wrote out like accounting scenarios and he goes, do it.
So you got paper and pen and you're writing that.
He wrote it up with his ruler, debits and credits. You know, he's like, go, do it, you know. And I was learning every day. He was using textbooks. He goes, read this. He actually got me to read books every day. And he influenced me to do my HSC while I was inside.
Did he thank you too for giving him a purpose? I feel like, you know, as someone that could spend the time teaching someone.
I think for him as well. Have you seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
Sounds familiar, but
Yeah, well, like I think for him, I was his pet project as well.
yeah, exactly. You both had a purpose.
Yeah, so for him as a project, all right, let's just turn this guy into something, you know. So you know, I ended up doing my HSC, and then we, you know, time passed, and we ended up separating to different correctional centres. So I was at Wellington Correctional Centre, which is about 5 hours inland of New South Wales, and I was in the yard playing cards with the boys, and one of the officers, he walks up to me, hands me this letter, and he goes, Joe, I don't know how you did it, but you bloody did it, mate. And I'm like, what's this guy going on about? So I grabbed that letter and I took it into my cell, and as soon as I opened it up, it said, congratulations, you've been accepted into UNSW.
Oh my God.
I was like, it was like the happiest moment, and you know, I was just thinking at that point, you
So
know,
this is you're doing tests and everything from jail. They allow you to do HSC.
education. Yeah. So I'll study on my own correspondence, and then I'll do an exam just like any other school would in a room with a teacher.
Were there many of you in jail doing that, or was it just
Not
you?
many. I did the test by myself. In a room with another teacher. Yeah, and so when I read that letter, I literally you know, realized, you know, when I got sentenced and going through all these traumatic things in prison, didn't even make me shed a tear, because, you know, I was accepted that this is going to be a consequence of my actions, you know. But I was sitting in that room that day, holding onto that letter, bawling my eyes out.
What was going through your head?
Because that was my ticket out of here, this life. I was like, this is my ticket out of this life, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And up to that point, while you were studying, like, did you start to feel like you're becoming a better person? Like, you know, no longer wanting to be a criminal when you're out there, and you can't wait to maybe serve the world. Like, was there anything like that?
I wasn't at that point yet. I was still living in that life, but I was studying. You know, all my boys would be like, "Oh, why are you so tired?" I'm like, "I was up till 2 a.m. studying."
Nerd.
And then they're like, "Nerd." I'm like, "Yeah, well, at least I'm doing something." You know, like for me, that was my passion. Like that was my pet project in there. You know, I'm doing something for myself. And then I just you know, that was my calling. Not like my purpose was to not only to train but to study. You know, and I ended up getting accepted to university, and it was just like, that's it. You know, it was education that actually gave me hope, and it was education that that set me free, and it was through a mentor that I met.
Yeah.
And that mentor, I still meet him today. He's out now, and we still meet. He's a Christian man as well. And
Was he a Christian prior to as
so
well?
he's Catholic. And we used to always debate between Christianity and Catholicism. And we had a good healthy relationship. We used to bag each other out all the time, but in a loving way. You know, he's a bit older than me, but you know, he had way more wealth of knowledge and life experience, and I was like kind of living my life through him, because through his stories, because I never lived life until that point. You know, I was in a bloody in the hood and in prison, and then I was watching the world through a box, which was a TV. So we had a really good relationship, and we used to always pray together. We used to pray before our meals. We used to pray before we go to bed. And he taught me one thing that still stays by me, that I stand by today is, a lot of people in society these days talk about manifestation. Manifesting this, manifesting that. When I look back on it, it was God answering my prayers. To non-believers, they might see it as, we're manifesting.
Yeah.
It's through self, know. But I truly believe that manifesting comes from myself to ask God, and if it's within His purpose, it will happen, And going to uni I used to pray every day to go to UNSW. I got in, and people are like, it's because you manifested it. No, because I prayed every single day for it, and God answered my prayers.
Yeah. So then what happened with Confit? How did you start this business? And if you could touch on, recently you've had to close down. So I would love to kind of touch on that as well.
Yeah, sure thing. So, like I said, fitness was, it's like my sense of purpose in prison. And whenever I used to train in jail, even though my body was incarcerated, whenever I used to train, my mind used to be free. There's a direct correlation between physical health and positive mental health as well. And I remember I used to have a training group, and we used to be the happiest guys. The people who train in jail, even in the most negative environment, we used to be the happiest people.
And how many hours would you train? Because you've got nothing else to do.
We would still do other things, but normally I would train twice a day. So once in the morning and once in the afternoon.
2 hours, an hour?
Yes, like a 2 hour session. I actually looked the best when I was in jail.
Yeah.
I was ripped.
Well, if you're spending half your day training.
Eating 6 of these a day, 30 grams of tuna in each can. And we used to get a lot of sleep, and that's where you grow. And there's nothing else to do but sleep when you get locked in as well, So we're resting, there's no stress, training every day. It's just a recipe for you to grow physically, right? But fitness was a very strong component of me being a positive person. And like I said, we had a group of guys that we used to train with, and one of the guys, he ended up getting released, and literally not long after, he came back in. And I said to him, do you like coming back to jail or something, And this is something he said to me that really hit me, right? It affected me hard, because he goes, Joe, we've had this conversation about me going square, cleaning my hands and doing the right thing. And he goes, but I just couldn't do it. I was like, why? He goes, people out there in society do not accept people like us. He goes, I try to change my circle of friends. I just couldn't fit in. They just, as soon as they found out I did nearly a decade, he actually did over a decade in jail. He goes, straight away, boom. The guard comes up. What were you in for? I don't trust you. Even when he got a job, he didn't have a job for a long time. So the only job he could get was like a broom pusher, And he goes, there's no sense of purpose in doing that. And I'm getting treated like a second-class citizen, And that kind of compiles over time. And then there was just a natural kind of thing for him to get back into crime. And that was in a short period. And I was like, damn. I saw myself in that. My mom's back in South Korea. I don't have family. I don't have any family here. The only circle of friends that I know are the criminals that are on the outside. What chance do I have when I get out? So I saw myself in that. I was like, you know what? I want to create a support system for inmates when they get out, like what we do through fitness in jail, but do it on the outside. So that was the idea when I first got out. So I started it just like a boot camp style in local parks, and we just started off with just the boys coming out of jail. Then they started bringing their friends, their partners, friends of friends.
And I love the name too, Confit. It's just like
Confit
you're
fitness.
proud of that.
Confit
This is our
fitness.
positioning.
Yeah. And one day someone goes to me, Joe, you should start charging. This is great. You deliver really good service. So at that time, I was going to university, studying my business degree, UNSW. And then I learned how to do payment gateways, because up until that point, I was like cash. Learn how to start a website, and then for one location turned to 2, turned to 3. And, it was great until COVID hit. COVID hit, and all of a sudden we had to shut down our whole business. And I'm like, what do I do now? And everyone's going online. I'm like, what the hell do I know about going online? But it was so funny, miraculously, you're going to laugh. You know how we used to train in our prison cells? So confined spaces, doing our body weight training. When COVID hit, we became the experts in confined space bodyweight training. Because
Wow, there's a niche for everything. Yes.
for 9 years, I used to train with my body weight only using tuna cans, right, and other props like chairs in my prison cell, right? We were the experts. No one knows how to train in confined space better than us, right? And funny thing happened, so we started marketing ourselves as that. I ended up getting a small studio like this and then running Zoom classes for my members. And then companies like Google and Atlassian picked us up and they started contracting us to run fitness programs for the employees. Yeah. So that's how our
Amazing.
name
Yeah.
got out there.
Yeah.
AFR picked us up and then we came out on AFR and it was insane, you know? Who would have known that, who would have thought that there would be time in history where being incarcerated will ever become a skill?
Yeah. And isn't it funny now you look at it, it's like God has a better design. Everything is just by design. Everything had to happen. Like,
Yeah.
have you asked yourself what would happen if you didn't go through all that? Would you change anything?
Who knows? I might either be 6 feet underground, you know, or still be locked up in jail right now, you know? Yeah, so I'm very blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happened with Confit recently that you could share?
Started off with boot camps and online, and then, you know, we started up a charity called Confit Pathways. So the charity utilizes lived experience mentors who've been through the justice system, right, to go back into youth justice centers to help young people, to mentor them and guide them into a better life. So we run fitness programs within the centers, and then once they come out, we help them to find jobs, help them to get educated. So they actually get, if they want to pursue education, they get a full scholarship at UNSW. So we really push the agenda of education while we're inside, and we give them that wraparound support once they're out in the community. So we've got this charity, we've got this boot camp model idea, and I ended up in 2022. I ended up getting the Westpac Social Change Scholarship. So they hand it out to 10 Australians who are social change makers every year. I don't know how I got it because I still remember putting in that application. I made it to the final panel round, and I'm sitting in the corridor and I'm looking at the people next to me. One person has the title OAM, Order of Australia Medal. The other person is designing a rocket ship to go to Mars, who's a PhD candidate. And me, I was still on parole, hadn't finished uni. I'm like, what freaking chance do I have against these guys? But I just went into the room and I thought, you know what, I'll just crack a joke. So there was 3 panelists and I sat down and I went, great, guys. Great to be here. Last time I sat in front of 3 judges was at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Here I am today. You know, they're a bank, right? Westpac's a bank, and they go, we're the most risk-averse organization. And to us, Mr. Kwon, you're a huge risk. How can you reassure us that you're not a risk? And I said, I can't. By being here is proof that what I'm capable of, right? But if an organization like Westpac does not support second chances, how do you expect the rest of Australia to?
Yeah.
You know, so in 2022, I became the 2002 Westpac Social Change Scholar, which allowed me to travel, visit different prisons around the world, different systems, to come back with this social enterprise idea. And being a Westpac scholar gives me a lot of credibility. So a lot of philanthropists, organizations started funding me this idea. So I pitched it to them and they funded it. That's how Confit Gym started. We ran it and we stuffed up the modeling and we realized that the floor space could not hold enough members for us to be profitable. And also, obviously, right now we're going through some macroeconomic issues, in not just in Sydney and Australia. So it's a combination of a lot of factors, which made me to decide, you know what, instead of keep on kicking it down the line, let's cut it while we know. We know we still got opportunity to get out early. So, and that was the hardest decision that I had to make. But it was a good business decision that I made. Yeah.
So what have you learned about business now? Entrepreneurship. Was it anything similar to when you were drug dealing, making all that money?
Oh, hell no. I've never been this stressed in my life, you know. But I think what prison allowed me to become is to gain the resilience that I needed to be a entrepreneur and a business owner, because man, to all the business owners out there, I mean, you guys are a different breed, you know, because it's not easy, you know. It's constant getting kicked on the floor, getting back up, kicked on the floor, getting back up. How do we pivot? How do we, you know, it's constantly thinking ahead. with all the stresses, especially when you've got employees in the mix as well. You're dealing with people as well. It's not easy. So but definitely, I'm grateful because I have the support of so many strong organizations and individuals that are mentoring me and supporting me at the same time. And definitely prison, going through all that has allowed me to be resilient enough to not give up. I don't see the gym closing down as a failure, but a learning point of what doesn't work, because failure is when you just give up and don't want to do it again. For me, it was a learning curve for me to go, okay, how do we make this better moving forward?
Yeah.
So we will be back with the gym, but we want to come back with the 2.0. So we're back to the drawing boards, and we'll do a little bit differently.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what we're going to do next. So you're still going to stick within, you feel like you're going to be still in the gym industry, but just a different spin to it.
We're going to do a little bit differently, but I still want to focus on our charity to become a national organization. So we're currently operating out of New South Wales. By the end of this year, early next year, we'll be expanding into other states and territories, but we're doing it through a digital way. So we're creating an app, a digital mentoring app, which allows us to stay connected with some of the most disadvantaged young kids in the most rural locations across Australia. So what we'll do is we'll go with our team. We did this in Mount Isa, which was far north Queensland, and we spent a couple of days with the community and the young people over there because Mount Isa has one of the highest crime rates in Queensland. And we spent a lot of time with the young people over there running fitness programs and doing fun stuff. But it was a shame because we had to leave, and it felt like we were just leaving them with nothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to run these sugar hit programs in all these regional areas and rural communities and leave them with the app. So we can stay connected. There's a lot of gamification on the app as well, and a way for them to be connected with service providers for them.
Wow, that's so exciting. You definitely are an entrepreneur now. You're no longer a drug dealer. You're full of creativity. So I guess if you were to look back at your journey, like what was the purpose for you at that, when you reflect back, it's like, what was God's purpose for that period of my life or that period? Like, were you able to analyze now and go, this was the journey?
It's funny. So my mum named me after Joseph from the Bible. Not Joseph, Mary and Joseph, but Joseph, the guy who was in Egypt, who spent 13 years in prison. I got sentenced to 13 years in jail. And I'm like, Mum, you manifested this with God. But if you know the story of Joseph goes to jail in Egypt, spends 13 years, wrongfully placed in prison. And, imagine the stuff he would be thinking, he could be thinking so many negative things in there going, my brothers put me here, screw the world, I'm just going to be this negative person. But he stayed so positive and he always kept on looking forward to things, and he had his faith in God and he was a dreamer, and as an entrepreneur, you're a dreamer as well because you got to be able to think big, to think ahead, and put actions into place for you to be able to achieve those dreams. So Joseph in the Bible was a dreamer. He ended up becoming the president, the prime minister of Egypt. I don't know if I'm going to become the prime minister of Egypt, but I think there's some great things that I really aspire to. The industry that I'm in right now is we're trying to solve one of society's complex issues, which is around not just incarceration, but the pipeline to incarceration. I truly believe that it starts in the community. Right now the Australian prison system is based around punishment. Punishment and rehabilitation cannot go hand in hand. It's one or the other. An Australian system is based around punishment. So instead of trying to change the system, I feel like there should be more work that needs to be done in our communities, and that's something that I really want to focus on as well. So so that's where I'm trying to go at the moment. And I'm not an entrepreneur; I'm a social entrepreneur. There's another complex layer added to it. Not only are we trying to create money, but the money is trying to go towards a good cause.
Yeah. So where's your mum on this journey now? Like she obviously wished that you were a good Christian, but you weren't, and then she was disappointed. And now she sees you go to church all the time. Like,
oh man, I think the only thing that my mom could wish for is for me to be a man of faith. It was a long journey, and I had a lot of ups and downs. And even when I got out, I was so inwardly focused on myself, saying, I went through this, I did this. And later on, when I had a really good chance to sit down and reflect, it was God that was there all along, and even when things happened with Confit going down, I was in a very depressed state for a little while because I thought this was going to be it, but it wasn't. And, and I started going to church a lot, and, I got to talk to Pastor Tony, and there was a lot of messages that felt like it was directed straight at me, but I think the one equation that I truly forgot was that it's all not about myself, but it's for God. And that's what I forgot. And it was, I think this whole situation that I went through was a reminder for me to be like, Joe, stay humble, because, this is not for you. This is for God's glory, for God's kingdom. So that's what I'm now going back to the drawing boards, is putting that at the center of focus and then building everything around that.
And your mum?
And my mum, like I said, my mum's
so
happy.
proud.
Look,
is she back in Australia?
No, she lives in South Korea.
Okay.
So she's remarried with my stepdad, and I was always the black sheep. The Asian community, right? It's like, when mums go out there talking about, what selective school did your kid go to, or what grades did they get in the HSC. Mama missed out on all that conversation, right? So at least one thing she can talk about is that my son is a man of God, and he's giving back to society. So. I think I'm making her happy now, so I'm glad. I'm glad that I'm a good son.
I'm so proud of you because, there's a quote that says, turn your mess into your message. And I feel like if you didn't go through all that, your message wouldn't be so strong. Look at how many people you're going to inspire through this podcast today. You even made me cry straight away on my episode with you. So I want to leave the last question is, obviously this podcast is about faith to freedom, and you're always having to think, one's, taking that leap of faith of you've done that multiple times, from even just studying there and then applying for a scholarship, and you did that. And so what message would you give to someone listening here now thinking, I want to pursue something, I'm scared of something, but I need a little bit of that pep talk. So
at the end of the day, it's a lot of people love to plan stuff, but they never put any action into it. I always say, just do it. Even take the first steps of doing it, like for example, I want to be a great public speaker, but I'm so scared to go in front of people, right? Just do, whenever opportunity presents itself, just do it. Because at the end of the day, you're thinking about how embarrassed you be, not thinking about the purpose that you want to create. It's not about you. It's about serving other people, if you're a Christian, serving God. Right? So just make the first step. Even if it's a small step, it's that one small step towards something. A lot of people like to go, I'm going to study first and get all the knowledge first, and then I'll do it. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, the best way to learn is through action. So be bold. If you're scared, pray to God. Say, give me some courage, and have some friends around you that will support you in having that courage to make that first step. Because it's very important to have the right people around you. Because if you have people that are going to be like, oh, no, you're not ready for this, and they're dragging you down, don't have those people around you. I always say, I want to have 5 strong lions around me constantly, because you are the sum of the 5 closest friends, So have friends or have people around you that's going to support you to take those little leaps all the time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. I was so inspired. I love your story, and I know people will enjoy it as well. But yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Lynn.